A big thank you to everyone. A happy Nurses Week to all. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Bessie Nasiopoulos, and I'm an internationally educated nurse myself, a case manager and professional development lead here at CARE. We are so very thankful to you all for taking time out of your very busy schedules to join us today as we listen into the inspiring stories and contributions of Dr. Angela Cooper Brathwaite. A big thank you to our IN members, to our valued colleagues, partners. We are extremely honored, as I said, to have with us Dr. Angela Cooper Brathwaite, recently appointee Order of Ontario and Canada, sharing her inspiring story, her contributions, and her journey, and explaining to us as well how we can also find our way to success. Because as we always say here at CARE, IEN success is our success. And we really do believe that, and we're very proud to have all the IENs with us sharing their beautiful and valued backgrounds and experiences as we envision a bright future, aiming to continue not only supporting our IENs integrating into the Ontario nursing workforce, but also supporting them to reach for the stars and become leaders themselves in Ontario healthcare workplace. I see many of our case managers, part of our team, and I'm extremely proud to be a member of CARE, as we are a big group of diverse professionals aiming to further support all IENs to start and advance their career in Ontario. A very big thank you to our program manager, Rola Mubader, and our executive director, Ruth Lee, for the continuous hard work, support, commitment, passion they share with us, supporting IENs transitioning and integrating and leading in the Ontario healthcare workplace. Sorry, before I go further, I'm just going to take a minute for our land acknowledgement. The land I'm standing on today is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chepway, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with the multiple Mississaugas of the Chepway bands. We are all treaty people. Many of us have come here as settlers, immigrants, newcomers in this generation or generation past. We also acknowledge those of us who came here involuntarily as part of the transatlantic slave trade and honor and pay tribute to the ancestors of African origin and descent. We are mindful of broken covenants, and we strive to make this right with the land and with each other. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you all to Dr. Angela Cooper Brathwaite, who is the past president of RNAO, co-chair of RNAO's Anti-Black Racism Task Force, and associate graduate faculty member at Ontario Technology University. She holds a PhD in nursing from the University of Toronto, a Master of Nursing from the University of Manitoba, a Bachelor in Nursing from Memorial University, Newfoundland, a Diploma in Nursing and Licensed Midwife from San Fernando General Hospital School of Nursing and Midwifery, Trinidad, and is Fellow of the American Academy of Nursing. Dr. Angela Cooper Brathwaite held executive leadership positions as Director of Nursing in Acute Care and Director of Nursing Education and Development at Lakeridge Health, Oshawa, and President of the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario, and has taught undergraduate nursing students in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Ontario Tech University, and graduate students at the University of Toronto and Ontario Technology University. In addition to her many well-deserved awards, in 2022, she received the Order of Ontario and has just recently been appointed to the Order of Canada. So very proud and grateful to have you with us, Dr. Angela Cooper Brathwaite. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Bessie. It's my privilege to welcome you. Happy Nursing Week, and it's International Nursing Day across the world. And I wish you, all the IENs and all the other attendees, Happy Nursing Week. I hope you had a great week thus far. My title today for this presentation is Our Nurses, IEN Successes. Our theme for this week is Our Nurses, Our Future, but I decided to limit the topic to our IENs and their successes. In 2021, the Government of Canada reported that 8.9% of IENs reside in Canada. In 2016, Ontario had over 10,850 IENs. In 2019, Canada had 439,975 INs. And according to Kai data 2021, Ontario had 12,487 registered nurses and 6,610 registered practical nurses. In the last 10 years, more than 25,000 internationally educated nurses immigrated to Canada, and half of them had bachelor degree or greater degree, greater than a bachelor. Yet the skilled INs had higher unemployment rate than the people born in Canada. Just a brief overview, continuing. So these are my objectives for the day, to give you that brief overview, which I just gave to you, discuss characteristics of IEN, which lead to success, discuss IEN's contribution, and that's based on the literature, what has been published thus far, and to share my personal contributions to nursing. And I then identify ways that you can enhance your contribution to nursing. Some of the characteristics, and I am not going to mention all, but I'm going to mention some key characteristics. I said, be courageous. Don't be afraid to take no for an answer. Don't ever take it. You must push forward, okay? And when you're courageous, you don't, if people criticize you, listen to what they have to say. If it's worth working on, use it. If it's not, ignore it, because you know yourself. Don't be defined by what other people think about you, because some of it might not be done for your good or your welfare, okay? So only accept what you think is true and what could benefit you in another way. Be innovative. Set goals and determine your outcomes. Persistence. Use failures as a stepping stone to success. And I like to share the stories, brief stories of two great men that you may have heard of. Abraham Lincoln. He lost 8 elections in the legislature. He lost in the Congress. He lost the first time he run for the president of the United States, and he never gave up. In 1860, he became the 16th president of the United States. Like to point to another guy, you must have heard of Thomas Edison. He invented the incandescent light bulb. We all use those light bulbs today. He had many failures. He said, I've had no failures. This is how we quote, I have had no failures 10,000 times, but I've learned to be successful or find successful ways that will not work. So in other words, he never looked at his failures as failures, but he looked at them as opportunities that he could try a different way to succeed. And that's huge. The other quality or characteristic, be flexible. Learn to adapt to different circumstances and settings. And I'll just share with you, when I lived in Northern Newfoundland, I've lived with people from maybe about 10 or 15 different cultures. I learned from them, they learned from me. We shared different apartments. When I first started working as a midwife, I shared with 3 different women. One was from Uganda, one was from India, one was French-Canadian from Sudbury, and myself. In the night, we share each other stories and we cook and shared with one another. When I was at university, I shared with many different people because I was living on campus. So every year you get new roommates and so forth. So I'm not going to go into a history of that, but shared with many different people. And similarly, when I lived in Manitoba, I shared with many different people as well. So flexibility is the name of the game. Have a positive attitude. I will tell people I'm an optimist. I'm also a realist. You know what you can do, and what you can't do, you could always ask people for help, okay? Right now, I'll just share something very personal. Right now, I am making some corrections for a manuscript I submitted to the Canadian Journal of Diabetes, and they asked me to do additional statistical analysis on it. And I had to go to my former PhD supervisor, Dr. Soraya Sidani, and asked her for some help because I'd shared the data with her and to run this data. And today, before I came on, I noticed that she's already sent me back that information and helping me to write the cover letter. So when you don't know, or if you have uncertainty, go to someone else who knows it. Don't waste your time. Ask for help. Don't be shy and keep a positive attitude. IENs make up and this is based now on the contributions of IENs, and this is not just in Canada, but other parts of the world. There is not much data in the literature about what IENs have done, but I'm going to share based on the literature what they have done and done successfully. IENs make up a diverse workforce and contribute to the provision of culturally competent care and diverse populations. IENs are an asset to the nursing and patient care services. They represent different nations, different cultural groups, different languages. And they are able, and you know, Canada is culturally diverse. The city of Toronto is still the most culturally diverse city in the world. So we have so many different cultures. And I'm sure when you go practice, you meet people from your culture or other cultures you've heard about. And it's a good opportunity to learn about other people's culture when you do a cultural assessment. We should always be open to find out about people's beliefs and practices, because we incorporate that into our nursing care, and also we come away much more informed. IEN's work experience and practice in other countries facilitated and enriched their understanding of certain cultural practices. And I told you this story, and I think I heard this from Dr. Ruth Lee many years ago, maybe over 20 years ago, about this man from Vietnam who was a single father, and his child had fever. And he used one of the practices, something called cupping, which is rubbing on the skin, to reduce the temperature. But the child's temperature wasn't reduced, so the child was taken to sick kid. Okay? And they accused him of physical abuse of his child. Just imagine, he's not very fluent in all the language, but he is a single father. He's taking care of his child, trying to help reduce the child's temperature. Nobody bothered to ask him how the child got the bruises. They just assumed that it was physical abuse. So they charge him, and of course, in those days, you're taking away kids from the children if they're abuses of the children. And he committed suicide. That story is very, very sad. And it shows us that we need to ask, we need to find out, and not make judgments about people and their practices. So understanding the cultural practices, I'm sure you know of those from your own culture and from other cultures, okay? IENs have fluency in other languages, which resulted in better patients and family experience in the healthcare system. So we bring with us, without being in Canada, we bring in some rich experiences. We bring in our knowledge, we bring in language, we bring in our empathy. All these characteristics we bring, and they contribute to a better healthcare system. IEN's diversity lead to improved access to care, quality of care, and health equity. And this is quoted by different researchers like Chen et al., Williams et al., and then Chan the Boomer, I'm not saying it correctly, et al. 2020, found community-based participatory action research partners with diverse group leverage distinctive and expertise to active participation in action. In other words, they share their knowledge and skill and enhance the whole group of researchers' knowledge about certain types of behaviors or practices. In participatory action research, partnerships gain distinctive perspective from their members that were diverse with respect to organization and professional backgrounds. So I am saying to you today, IENs make a lot of contributions, and I have not added all the other contributions you have made. I have just given you, this is based on the literature review, okay? And I will now get into some of my contributions. And before I do that, I'll make a few quotes. Most things that are known about you are things you have failed to overcome or things you have overcome. And I know there are some English poet that said, you know, the good that you do are buried with your bones, but the evil live after you. But today's world, the good is known as well as the bad things, okay? In other words, see a crisis, see adversity and challenges as opportunities. And you know, we could look at things from a negative perspective, but every time you have an adversity or a challenge, it gives you the opportunity to think of a different way of approaching that problem or that situation. And also exploring with other people who might have experienced it. And like I mentioned earlier on, with this additional analysis that I was asked by the reviewers to incorporate in my research study, I went to Soraya. And Soraya has been my mentor, my friend, my guide. She calls me her firstborn. I was the first PhD student she had. We've kept contact with each other all through the years and celebrate. And what a knowledgeable researcher, advocate, and friend she's been to me. So don't be afraid when you have challenges. If you can't think of an alternative way to address it, talk to someone else. They might provide you with a perspective that you had not considered. Or you might go to somebody who is a mentor or somebody who is an expert in something else, and they would provide you with that kind of knowledge and skill that you need. So, and I'll quote Dr. Miles Monroe. He said, crises produces promotion. In other words, if you just stay stagnant, our life would be boring, honestly. So we do have challenges to help us grow, to help us develop. Do not look at challenges or adversity as a stumbling block, but is as a way to learn more, to look at alternatives, to move forward in the right direction. So before I talk about my contributions, I want to talk, I have done a lot in advocacy, and I want to say no one person does advocacy to be successful. You might do advocacy, but you involve a lot of different people in doing it. And before I said any of my successes, I just want to thank God that He's been with me through all my years and helped me. And one of my favorite Bible verses is, be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee, whithersoever thou goest. And when I left Trinidad, I came with that Bible verse. And it has been my life verse, knowing that God is with me. I will meet people, and if I don't meet the right people, someone else would be there to help me through, okay? So it's an encouragement to you. So what advocacy is, it's deliberate and strategic use of evidence-based information, the media, experts, human, and other resources to shape the policy landscape. Policy advocacy involves the use of media messages, grassroots coalition building, letter writing campaign, direct contact with decision makers, or bring about change. And I've done a lot of work in advocacy, and I'm giving you these definitions. It's not a one-man job, okay? So policy advocacy, it is construed through complex interactions, negotiations, among the range of stakeholders, a lot of stakeholders you work with, including politicians, interest groups, advisory groups, bureaucrats, and a range of other actors for you to accomplish your goal. So some examples. In 2011 to 2012, I collaborated with Ontario Public Health Association, the Registered Nurses Association, the ONA, Ontario Hockey Federation, to advocate for safe practices, thereby changing the culture and the attitude within sports that contribute to injury. Oh, we're having some technical problems.
Yes, sorry, I'm trying to,
Okay.
I think we got it.
Okay. In 2012, okay, so you see how many groups, and beside those associations, I collaborated also with 35 public health units. So all the public health units, I did the draft, I got the evidence, and I sent it to all my public health managers who were in injury prevention. And I said to them, this is what's happening. There is a lot of concussion in children for the body contact, and those practices need to change, okay? In 2012, Ontario Hockey Federation changed the practice by eliminating body checking among children to prevent injuries and implementing strategies to concussion in children. Today, we have those strategies in schools, okay? Because sometimes children suffer concussion in the past and then they went on playing. No, it shouldn't be done. So this is one of the things I work with, not myself, I initiated it, but I work with many partners, including organizations, coalition members, colleagues. It's not, so this is what I clarified before. When you see advocacy is achieved, it's many persons working together on the same thing to bring it to pass, okay? So you need your partners. In 2008, 2009, I facilitated changes in healthy public policy to amend the Highway Traffic Act, which is called distracted driving, passenger safety through letter writing campaigns, submission of reports to the provincial government standing committee at Queen's Park. I'd include all the list of people I work with, again, the public health unit managers who are injury prevention managers, my staff at where I work in public health. We had the Injury Prevention Coalition, many other stakeholders. Finally, when it went to the government, they asked me to come and defend it. So I went to Queen's Park, one of my staff and myself, we went to Queen's Park and defended it. And we had a lot of opposition because we had asked for, beside the distracted driving, that is your texting and or you're on your phone and all that. Through that law today, we don't text and drive, okay? That was part of this legislation. One of the things we had asked for is for children who get the license for the first time when they drive at night to have supervision by an adult. But the farmers opposed that. They said, oh, in the farming community, they won't have that kind of supervision. So of course, that was not included. And every time I hear all these teenagers in a collision and some of them dying, I realize if that act had that kind of protection, because people just start driving and they speed, or when the colleagues with them, they're talking and they're having fun and they don't realize speed kills. So in September 2009, the Highway Traffic Act was amended to 118 with this distracted driving. It's still on the books. It's still guide our laws in Ontario, and Bill 126, passenger safety. In 2000, I collaborated with local, provincial government, the RNAO, the OPHA, Smart Race, Safe Kids Canada, and 35 public health units in Ontario to influence the provincial government in amending the Ontario Building Code. And what was happening in the Ontario Building Code, many people were falling downstairs. And the government did listen. They changed the building code. They amended it to include stair design. So all the new homes from after that date, don't have, some of the older homes may have, if the second level, you have just a row of steps going straight up. They are not in the newer homes. You may have 1 or 3 steps and there's a platform, 1 or 2 or 3 steps, or maybe 4, and a platform to go up to your second floor. Like my house was built after that, so I have 3 platforms to go up to the second level. So you don't fall from such a height when there's just a long straight step from the first floor to the second floor. So that piece of legislation came through and was passed. In 2005 to 2006, I collaborated with local and provincial governments, the RNAO, the OPHA, the Smart Risk, Safe Kids Canada, and 35 public health units in Ontario to influence the provincial government to amend the Highway Traffic Act. And the Traffic Act is 1 seatbelt per person. Limit the number of seatbelts to the number of passengers in a vehicle. And why this came about, I was the manager of injury prevention and substance misuse at that time. There was a group of visitors from China in Ontario. They were in a van. They did not have enough seatbelts and they had a collision. Several of them died and some of them were badly injured. And based on that story, I decided to put that on the books in public health and to write. So when I say collaborate with RNA, it means it was submitted as a resolution to RNA and OPHA and Smart Risk. Okay, so when you see that. So I brought in the broader nursing community, public health community to work on this. And in 2006, this act was amended. So think about it now. Today, if you're not wearing your seatbelt, the police will charge you. And if you don't have enough seatbelts in your car, the police is going to charge you. Before that, 2005, many people could have driven in a car without having a seatbelt. And because of that case, with that family that was visiting from China, they were just visitors. So many of them died. I took that story and I looked at the literature and submitted a resolution. I went, of course, first to my supervisor and our medical officer of health. So there are many chains you go through. So when you see a policy advocacy has been accomplished, as I said before, you work with numerous people at different levels, including politicians and so forth. Okay, so in clinical nursing, I'll just share something from my clinical practice, what I advocated for. In 1997, I advocated for the implementation of a clinical program to bridge the gap between hospital maternity units and the community. A number of breastfeeding babies at the time were dying of jaundice in the community. There was nobody to follow them, and we had the early discharge program, so people could be discharged at 24 hours. Some even went home within 16 hours from maternity. But those new mothers, they didn't know how to recognize jaundice in the babies. And when I start to look at the stats, how many newborn babies were dying from jaundice, I was sitting on the board at RNA at that time, and Minister Elizabeth Whitmer, she attended an assembly meeting, and I approached her at our assembly meeting, and I said, Minister Whitmer, I'd like to share some information with you. And I shared my story with her. I gave her the literature, how many newborn babies were dying from jaundice. And she took it upon herself. And that healthy babies, healthy children was born, okay? So 1998 to 1999, in collaboration with the medical, this is another one I'm going to talk about, collaborate with the medical director of maternity, pediatricians, surgeons, anesthesiologists, staff, community members, and I to implement C-section in the Booton Suite at Lakeridge Health Oshawa. This was one of the most difficult or more challenging things I advocated for. And I saw someone in the audience today, her name is Seppeline Dana Ryan. She was part of this process because anesthesiologists said they're going to teach the nurses, and then they started saying to the
so just download the app, right?
Sorry? They started telling the nurses how, you can't do the scrubbing and circulating. Instead of it, the OR was on the main floor, the birthing suite was on the 5th floor, okay? So when we have a woman who is in distress labor, okay, or the baby who is in fetal distress, to get from the 5th floor to the 4th floor is a delay in time. To the mother and to the baby, they're both at risk. So I thought other places had C-sections in the birthing suite. So I educated my nurses. I sent them to places like Ajax Pickering had a C-section in the birthing suite, Mount Sinai, St. Mike's. I sent them to conferences to educate them because they were being told they couldn't do it, and show them nurses in other jurisdictions were doing it. So what we had, then the challenge was, it will cost so much money to buy the equipment to start that. The Ministry of Health had a grant. I applied for a grant of $100,000 so I could buy the bed and different equipment. The long short of the story is I also hired an educator, and that is Zeppelin Danaran. I could call her name, she is here today, who taught the nurses scrubbing and circulating. I also had the support of my colleague who was in the director of the POC, the OR, and the operating room and everything else, get her support. It was finally implemented in 1999 in the Bergen Suite. It still exists today. Save lives. In 1980, I developed and implemented a women's clinic in Northeast Newfoundland to provide direct care to all women, and that included doing the annual checkups, the prenatal and postnatal visit. I was the only midwife providing care for 7 different communities at the time. There were some of them were isolated, some were semi-isolated. And what stimulated me to do that is when we had these general clinics, you have women coming in general clinics, you have men, women, everybody mix up, you know, and I thought, this is chaos. So I streamlined the process. Of course, I had to go to the politicians for those areas and tell them what I was doing. They bought into it. The women were very pleased, and the rest is history. Okay, some of the advocacy I've done with RNAO, and I'm not going to be too long. Time is running. Actively advocate for RNs, NPs, and nursing students with MPPs during Queen's Park Day, Queen's Park on the Road during Nursing Week, and using TV and radio interviews. And of course, we have NPs are now able to prescribe drugs. They're now able to read x-rays and do many different things. And also primary care nurses got an increase in salary through some of that. In 2020, I met with Prime Minister Trudeau, Prime Minister Premier Doug Ford, Minister Christine Elliott, Mary Lee Fullerton, Peter Betton-Favre, our Finance Minister Rob Phillips, Minister Maroney, leader of the opposition party, Horvath, Mike Schreiner, and all these different people to talk about PPPs, PPEs for nursing staff and the ratio of it. So those are some of the things. If I go on, I'll spend too much time. I think I've already spent too much time on policy advocacy. So I'm going to jump some of my slides so I could get on to, I also did for minimum wage, and so did RNAO members. And one thing I want to say about the chief nurse, in 2019, I was in Singapore at the ICN conference. We had all these countries, international countries, they had a chief nurse. And Canada did not have a chief nurse. When I came back, Doris and I started sending tweets to the Prime Minister in Nursing Week 2020 virtually. Again, we spoke to him, and today we have the Prime Minister has reinstituted the primary nurse. It was advocacy, okay? And I'm not going to stay any longer on advocacy. I need to move on. So some of my work in contributions is I taught graduate courses, program planning and evaluation. I helped nurses at the University of Toronto develop and finalize their research questions. Some of them use it for their PhDs and some of them implemented it. And I'm going to skip slides because I'm running out of time. As a member of a thesis committee for students, I've assisted them in developing their thesis proposal from conception to completion, publication. Some of them I publish alongside them. Currently, I have 3 students at the Master of Science at Ontario Tech. 2 are coming to completing the thesis and 1 is just starting. Okay, sorry guys, I have to cut it. And research, I have contributed to research, and my areas of research, I have done research in cultural competence, culturally competent care, and education as well. I have over 60 peer-reviewed journals that are 60 research studies published in peer-reviewed journals. And I've done physical abuse, verbal abuse. Right now, I'm still doing prevention of type 2 diabetes. I'm working with the Filipino people and hoping to publish 4 studies from that research study. And also I do some work on anti-racism. So in research, it's not only teaching students and helping them to refine their research topic or sitting on their committees or helping them get to publication, but also getting some of that research published. So I broaden the literature in nursing. So I add to the body of literature in nursing from my research. So these are some of my research contributions, and I am going to run from them. You will have the slides. As a leader, I provided direction and leadership to staff, coach and mentor staff, nursing student responsible for developing and defending budget, facilitating staff reach their full potential. Like last night, I mentioned earlier to Bessie that I met one of my former staff, and when I was working at Lakeridge Health as a director of nursing, as director of education, I encouraged my staff to go and do the master's because the educators had a bachelor degree and the managers did not have a degree. So encourage them, establish a research fund with the foundation. And so when we went through re-engineering and downsizing in the 80s, all those managers had gotten their degrees and they were able to move to different jobs. And the staff I met with last night at Nursing Week celebration, she has her master's and she's still working. So it's good to see some of the people who you help influence. So I have done leadership in several different places. Sometimes, like when I was in acute care as a director, I had 550 FTEs. So I'm not going to go through all the FTEs. That was the largest portfolio I've had. Half the hospital reported to me. It was a challenge, but yet you had the opportunity to influence many people at different levels in the careers and see some fruition. They went on to achieve great things. So I want to talk about enhancing your own contributions. And there are many ways in which you could enhance your contribution. Mentoring. You could mentor if you're in a higher level class or university class or whatever, you could mentor somebody who's junior to you. I remember when I was a 4th-year student and I mentored people who were just starting nursing. I was back in Trinidad, mentor them. So they used to come to my house and I used to teach them. And believe me, when you teach people, not only you reinforce what you learn, but you also expand what you learn. It's a great teaching. It's a great career, I will tell you. And you have the opportunity to mentor. So when I see some of my mentees now who have finished the PhDs and working in different jobs, I feel very happy because I know I had some opportunity to help to influence them. So you can mentor or get a mentee, a mentor. You could be a mentor or you could get one, okay? A mentor is always somebody who has a bit more knowledge in one area that you don't have. And all those students who are here today, I want to encourage you, if you don't have a mentor, ask someone to mentor you, okay? Volunteering, some of the work I mentioned there under advocacy is volunteering with RNAO and collaborating with RNAO staff, my colleagues who are members of RNAO to do some of that policy advocacy that I mentioned in the last end. Joining a professional association, because there's a lot of opportunity for learning and sharing and leadership. And I would say every nurse is a leader. Learn from others, be willing, be open. Advocating for healthy public policy, you might not initiate the policy, but you could help to work on the policy. somebody bring it to your attention. And I would say to some of the students, most of my research that I do today, it comes through clinical practice. So if you observe something, you could take that and you could question it, see if there's anything done about it, and if there's nothing done about it, turn it into a research project. Get help from your colleagues. So you have the opportunity to see things. Some of the things I advocated for, like I mentioned, the story with the person, with people who died from China, or the chaos when I went to this clinic to work, healthcare center in Newfoundland. Through that, I did advocacy. Or through noticing all those breastfeeding babies dying in the community. It was through my observation. And that's how I do research as well. Through my observation from clinical practice, I change it and turn it into a research project. So I want to encourage you, don't think research is so far beyond your reach. I want to encourage you, get engaged. You could work as a research assistant. I have hired students to work as my assistant, to collect my data for me, or to put the data into a database, or be a member of the research team. There are all those opportunities. And in leadership, don't be afraid to take the assignments, be challenged. From clinical practice, you have the opportunity to change your practice, to enhance patient care. There are lots of opportunities, and I don't want to beat it over the bridge or over the head, as we could say, about clinical practice. Most of my research comes through my clinical practice. Okay? So I just have the opportunity to ask you a question. I know I run through some parts of it, but I highlight pieces of the different areas or roles that I have done. So now is your opportunity to ask me questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cooper. You never cease to amaze me, and I think you never cease to amaze your audience always. So many contributions in advocacy and policy and leadership and education. We are so very grateful and thankful for all of them, and very thankful for the words of encouragement. I think we all need them, and having such an inspiring role model as yourself, I think it's the best way to celebrate Nurses Week and International Nurses Day today. Again, I can't say enough. You never cease to amaze me, and I think the audience always, such amazing stories and contributions that you have to share. I'll pass the floor to Rola, our program manager. Please, Rola, go ahead.
Thank you, Betsy. Thank you, Dr. Angela. Actually, the last time we had the conversation and I interviewed you, I actually was sure that I will always not enough from your wisdom, not enough from your inspirational journey. And we keep learning and we keep actually looking at this. And I liked the thought about mentor and mentee. And I've just wrote a chapter book, and I didn't know that as an IAN, one day I'll be writing a chapter book. So kudos to all the encouragement, and for all the IANs on this call. Are you going to actually enhance your roles? So there's always opportunities. Though there's crisis, I moved to a back and forth to many places in the world, but being in Canada, this is of nursing profession to the research. And thank you so much again for being so much of an inspiration to all of us today. Thank you.
I would like to ask if there are any questions in the comment, in the chat, so that people have asked. So
I don't see questions, but I see many words of admiration, admiring your resilience, giving the courage to keep going despite all the challenges. Many words of gratefulness, and you're such an inspiration. Thank you for all your contributions, influence, and most of all for being an amazing individual and internationally educated nurse. We do have to mention, and thank you to our Ruth for mentioning it in the chat box, on that topic of mentorship. We do here at CARE have our own mentorship program, and we're very, very proud of it and hope that all our IANs can take advantage of it to start that route of mentoring and mentee. Ruth, did you want to add something to that? I know you had a comment there in the chat box.
Well, first of all, I learned so much from Angela, and she's such an inspiration to all of us. And before we start a session, I mentioned to Angela that if any of us, nurses, IENs, locally educated, when you feel discouraged, and I know that we have many of those moments, just think of Angela. You know, her perseverance, her patience, her never give up spirit is such an inspiration. And I'm so proud to have the privilege to learn and been with Angela for all these years. And when Rola and Megan and myself and the PA team were at the PI IEN conference, it absolutely warms my heart. And I see that Emmeline is here with us. Emmeline, please wave at us. Emmeline is one of our clients, and she's now a professor in Alberta. So all the hard work that the care team have done with our clients is like almost the analogy I often use, the botanical garden in Victoria, the beautiful flowers, the different colors. And we plant all these seeds. We nurture those seeds. We don't know when they started to bloom. And I was so overwhelmed with emotion when I see the success story of our members. So Emmeline, would you like to say a few words? I'm sure Angela like to hear another success story of IEN as well.
I will try. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, because my mic is really not good in this computer, so I'll try. It was such a pleasure to listen to you, Dr. Cooper. You're such an inspiration since always. It's like to see a big idol. You're like, oh, I want an autograph or someone you've been citing for so long. And it's such a good case, a good role model for us to have as IENs, to know that we can reach for the sky. We can aim higher, because it's the process and coming to a new country sometimes can be overwhelming, and we can have a low self-esteem and lack that belief, that strength, but we can do whatever we want. We can reach for the sky. Thank you so much for being such a role model for us. Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
And I also like to add the importance of being mentors. And I count myself a very, very lucky person. I have many mentors throughout my career and my life. And I also like to acknowledge the mentorship I have received from Ella Ferris, who is actually now one of our board members. And Ella, over the years, I look up to you. I learned so much from you, and all the story I hear from your staff, that how you are such a role model, a deep down a great nurse to all of them, being the role model. So again, this is the day, this is a week, we count our blessings as our nurses, and counting the blessings that we have from our mentors, I think should be one of those blessings that we need to remember.
Thank you so much. And we have a question or a comment. Diane, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much to everyone. Thank you, doctor, for encouragement, because to be a nurse is a very challenging work. It's a very challenging profession. So I wanted to ask, how can we do, because I would like to be mentor, how can I receive those courses, or what can I do, please?
It might not be formal courses. Some places have formal courses, but a mentor does not have to be part of a formal course. It's somebody who has a bit more knowledge than yourself in an area that you would like to grow. So ask them if they could help you. And you know, they might set up a meeting with me once with you. I was doing mentorship for a group of internationally educated nurses. They're not nurses, sorry, they're in global health. And I used to meet with them twice a month. You know, every 2 weeks, I meet with them, ask them, you know, what the challenges were, discuss the issues, give them pointers, recommend things that they could read, or give them feedback on what they were doing. It all depends on what your needs are. Because you don't have to have a program, a formal program, but somebody who has more knowledge or skills in an area that you would like to grow, just having a chat. Maybe they might want to talk to you once a week, or every second week, depending on what it is. And sometimes, you know, I've mentored people, they want to learn research. Like right now, 3 of the researchers in the Philippines, we are doing quantitative and qualitative methods. The bulk of the study is quantitative. None of them have done quantitative. They've all done qualitative. So I am mentoring them in how to interpret the results of these qualitative studies and guide and coach and so forth. So it's somebody, you mentor someone who knows more than you in a specific area. And you learn from your mentor and the mentor learns from you as well. It's a give and take. Because when you chat with people, you learn other things about them.
Very true, mutual
Thank you
relationship.
very much.
And to add to that, Diane, I don't know if you are a CARE member or a past member or colleague or partner, but we do have a program here, and our mentoring lead, Lourdes, I can share with you after our contacts, or you can reach to your case manager. So we can connect you with an expert nurse, a mentor in an area that you're interested, so you can continue to grow and flourish and reach your full potential here in Ontario as well. We do have a question in the chat box as well. I see from Paula Kemi. How were you able to balance all these contributions and accomplishments with your family, knowing all the challenges in nursing?
That's a good question. And I should say that I was always very physically active. One of the things I try to maintain is a balanced life. Okay, sometimes it gets imbalanced, but physical activity. So regardless of whether I'm in school or not, I always involve in physical activity. And physical activity for me has several benefits. It refreshes my mind because after 10 minutes of physical activity, the endorphins kicked in. So it elevates my mood. Okay, it also relaxes me with my deep breathing when I walk very fast, you know, and do my exercises. It reduces my stress. So doing physical activity at least 5 times a week helps with my balancing, okay? And one of the strengths I have is organization, okay? Organization is one of my skills. So I do have, I have several filing cabinets that I have articles in. And sometimes I have trouble. Like this morning, I spend my time looking for some articles, but they're all in files. So it's just go through those cabinets. So organization is one of my skills, or strengths, I should say. So I'm very organized, and I do get involved not only work in nursing, but also in my church work as well. And I'm not afraid to ask for help. And also, if I can't do something at a time, I try to say, well, to the person, I can't do this now, but maybe I could do it in a month's time or maybe 6 weeks' time. So you also need to have that kind of schedule where you tell people, if you ask me to do X, Y, Z, I might not be able to do it. But I do take care of myself. Self-care is very important, because if you don't care for yourself, you can't care for others. And one of the ways I do help self-care is engage in physical activity, and I do sing in a choir in my church. So those 2 things relax me. So having some relaxation and being organized in how I organize my work, and I help move things.
Amazing self-strategies tips as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Cooper, for that. And going back to the mentorship that Diane was talking about, I just realized from our past coordinator that Diane is a member of our past program, and she's connected with her to further support her with mentorship in Quebec, where she is. And that takes me to the next question that we have in the chat box. Can we also have mentoring privileges outside of Ontario? So Irene, we will also connect you with our past program coordinator and see how we can further support you with that. Very amazing opportunities, and very grateful for our past program and all the support systems that they have to offer all our members preparing to enter Canada. So a very big thank you. Megan is answering to Irene. Thank you, Megan, for that.
And the other thing I would add is you have to have balanced sleep. And I tell people, up to last night, I was telling some of my colleagues, I was at the nursing meet celebration last night, and I told them, and I say it in a joke, but it's true. I say I'm like a baby. I need my sleep and I need my milk. I have milk every night and I need to go to bed on time. So having enough rest so your body is rejuvenated from the stress of the day, doing the physical activity, doing some self-care for yourself. And when you have a family, it's more challenging. I realize that. You know what I used to say to some first-time mothers when I was teaching them in Newfoundland? Some, and especially professional women, you know, they thought, oh, this is going to be a breeze, you know. And I saw the curator of this museum. She had a PhD and she was having her first baby. And I said to her, are you going to get some help? She said, no, I'm not going to. And I was following her up. I followed up. The first visit, she ran out. She had no milk. She had this baby and she was pulling her hair out. So eventually, and her mother was living in New Brunswick. I said, you should send for your mom to come and give you a hand. So, and I went and buy her milk. As a public health nurse, you're not supposed to do that. But I bought her some milk because she was so desperate. And I said to her too, you need to go on a date with your husband once a week. Get somebody who could babysit to take care of your children, somebody you trust, okay? Sometimes you have to get people to supervise the children, to get a break, okay? You do need a break. So I had to say to some mothers that I was teaching, you know, take a break. You marry your husband before you had your kids. Take a night off and go out on a date with your husband. Get somebody who could care for your baby, who's responsible to take care of your baby would be fine. So you have to, you know, as your life become more complex, you have to get more help, okay?
Thank you so much for highlighting all those strategies, Dr. Cooper. And it's very funny because this morning we had a chat amongst us case managers here about self-strategies. And we're actually thinking in the near future hosting a session about that to support IAN specifically on self-strategies, to the point exactly today. So very, very helpful tips and strategies to, as you said, if we're not well, we cannot be able to perform. So we have to take care of ourselves as well and not forget that. So thank you for reminding us and highlighting that. I don't see any further questions. I see many comments of appreciation and gratefulness for all that you have done and all your words of wisdom. We can't thank you enough. It's always a pleasure. You never cease to amaze us. And we're very, very grateful to be able to listen in and to your inspiring stories every single time, listening into all that you have accomplished and get inspired ourselves. So happy Nurses Week to all. Happy International Nurses Day. Reach for the stars, as we said, keep on working to lead in Ontario, because as Dr. Cooper said, we are leaders. And as Dr. Ruth Lee says, your success is our success. So I think we're all inspired to move ahead for a bright future, and looking forward to hearing about all your success stories in the near future.
Thank you very much. And I would say enjoy the rest of Nursing Week. It ends tomorrow. Have fun. Go out for dinner with a friend or your family. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye-bye,
you.
everyone. Thank you.